All right, all right, all right. Welcome back, El Bacan. How's it going? Absolutely not, man. We were in Missoula, Montana, hanging out with a bunch of like-minded individuals, like getting new information. How's it going? All right, we'll accept it. We'll accept it. I hope you guys enjoyed your community meetups and got some delicious local food to fill your bellies and your buddies and your bellies. I hope they're all full. On that note, got to give a big shout out to Craven Coffee. They did refresh us over lunch, so if you need an antidote for your post-lunch comatose, feel free to head on back and coffee up as needed. So we're going to jump straight into it, and I'm going to take a minute here to introduce our next, we'll say performer, not speaker. So, Erin Giefer is the founder of Catalyst Communications, which she started 5 years after retiring from a career in media sales. After her retirement, Erin quickly learned that she had a knack for sales, marketing, and web communications. And in 2015, she was the nationwide top seller of web services in her company, outperforming all of her 500-plus sale colleagues. Get some. Erin is a high honors double major graduate of the University of Montana with a BA in rhetoric and public discourse communication and political science with a minor in psychology. She also holds a master's degree in public administration and has 10 years of experience in nonprofit service, plus a background in politics. Pretty impressive, right? But that ain't why Erin's here. Erin is also a certified elemental hoop dance teacher and the owner of Mountain Mermaid Hooping. Since 2012, Erin has been fortunate enough to attend numerous flow art festivals and workshops where she was mesmerized by talented instructors from across the globe. She took away with her not only new tricks and ideas, but also a desire to share this awesome activities and cultivate community in her hometown. This inspired Erin to teach hooping classes to both children and adults, and through hooping, Erin continues to be transformed on the levels of mind, body, and spirit. So in order to generate a little bit of kinesthetic energy in the room, we're gonna bring Erin out here to show you what she's got. Give it up for Erin.
When's the last time that you played with a hula hoop? When's the last time that you played? Truly, freely, authentically played. No goals, no deadlines, just fun. There's something magical about simply playing, recreating voluntarily without pressure for a specific outcome. Just allowing your body and your brain to flow as they please. Play cultivates creativity. It improves brain functioning and plasticity. It helps us be better problem solvers. And yet as adults, we phase out play in favor of more important tasks. But imagine if play was a part of your adult life. Imagine if you brought more creativity, increased brain functioning, and better problem solving to your important tasks. Which is why I'm here today, to demonstrate how adult play cultivates creativity in entrepreneurs. About 4 years ago, I saw an adult woman hula hooping, and it captivated my attention. I hadn't thought much about hula hooping since I was a kid, but when I watched this woman spin the hoop around her body, I was mesmerized. I thought to myself, I want to do this. My body can support this. And this plastic circle became a symbol of my creativity. So I was obsessed, and I threw myself into this new activity. I didn't want to share this today, but I think it helps explain why movement-based play has taken such an important role in my life. I had lived for 12 years with extreme pain and injury before I found hula hooping. And I found it incredibly difficult to even complete daily tasks. I had a lot of trouble sitting for school or for work. I certainly couldn't hula hoop, I couldn't dance, I couldn't snowboard, and I couldn't mountain bike, all of which are very, very important activities to me today. And so for about 4 years, since I've been able to play and enjoy life again, I've noted dramatic changes in my life. Because with hooping, I found a state of flow. I'm more open, more curious, more creative, and more spontaneous than ever before. With injury, not only was my body rigid, but so was my thinking. Nowadays, I handle change a lot better, and I go with the flow pretty often, thanks to the skills I've cultivated through movement-based play. And yes, these movement-based play skills do translate to cognitive function. An example would be when I'm learning new tricks, my brain is making pathways and strengthening itself. So if I'm doing this and I think, this is pretty cool, I enjoy this, well, maybe I want to go down here. And maybe I want to figure out how to spin that around my body. And now I've got this whole sequence of activities that I couldn't figure out how to put together before I started playing. The message to me is that I can break through barriers and break through obstacles if I just keep trying and keep playing with new skills. So today, we're going to try out a couple hula hoop tricks and give you an opportunity to play. And if you look under your seats, you'll find a hula hoop. Woohoo! For those of you who would like to participate, and in my opinion, who wouldn't, if you would stand up and find room, you'll need about this much room in arm's length on each side of you. If there's not enough room in the seating area, you're welcome to go in the mezzanine right behind you. Also, if you have a shoulder or an arm injury, please be mindful of what is right for you. Does everybody have good space? Okay. So there's numerous types of play, and hula hooping encompasses several of them. It's object play, it's social play in this setting, and it's also body play. We're going to learn the lasso, which looks like this. In your dominant hand, you will extend the dominant hand towards the sky. Doo-doo. You'll open it so that there's an L. And we're not going to have a really rigid stand, we're just going to have a firm stand where my arm is extended. And I make that L so that my hand can open up and allow the hoop to spin around my palm and maybe my fingers. You'll notice with my hoop, it's horizontal to the ground. So there's two ways that we can do this. I can either spin my arm up from the side, whee, and then open it, or I can start with the hoop up here and then open it. A word of caution, which some of you have just found out, the hoop may hit you in the face. Yeah, roll with that one. And maybe this arm gets a little tired. Maybe you want to take your non-dominant hand and place it next to the dominant hand, allowing you to switch arms. Or maybe you want to just keep giggling and laughing, which is precisely the point of this whole exercise, and you're all already winners, so good job. Awesome, great job in the front row there. And maybe, depending on where you're located in the room, you want to try taking a couple steps with your hula hoop. Very nice, very, very nice. Now, you've learned this awesome new skill called the lasso. Woohoo! Because it's like a lasso. We can take this same trick and do it down here, like we're stirring the cauldron. The secret to stirring the cauldron for me is grounding my hand on my leg so I have something to hold on to. But it's the same movement, except the L is now facing down. You'll notice this one is notably harder, which is a great way to get even more brain strength and plasticity. Double hoop, very nice. playing and start talking again. Good. So we'll pause on that trick for now. Thank you so much. Like looking out and seeing all your faces light up with laughter and smiles that's exactly why I got into teaching. It's super fun to share the joy of an activity and see people laugh and smile. So let's recap what just happened. What did you feel when you played with a hula hoop? Did you smile? Did you laugh? Did you forget your problems in the office or quit worrying about what you'd feed your rugrats for dinner tonight? This is play. Humans were meant to feel joy. What you experienced with play was freedom, a diminished sense of self-consciousness. It's happiness. Dr. Stuart Brown, who's a leader in the play field, says that the opposite of play isn't work, it's depression. Play puts everything back into perspective by bringing joy back into our lives for us. So how does play work? Well, if I have this hoop and I'm going to spin on my body, and I'm having a great old time, this is wonderful, and then the thing flies off my body, I could be pretty annoyed and frustrated by that and stomp over and pick up my hoop and think, I lost, game over, I don't want to play anymore. Or I could saunter on over to my hula hoop and look at it and think, I would really like to have this hoop back on my body. What's a creative way that I could do that? And I can find a creative way to get that hoop back on my body. So not only do I have a super cool new hula hoop move, but I've learned the skill of adaptability. Play invites me to explore new possibilities and open up new solutions that I didn't know were there before. And this is exactly how play translates into real-life solutions for me. If I take this experience of being open to new solutions and apply it to my business life, the possibilities are truly endless. Creativity is the fuel of entrepreneurialism. It is often the difference between a good idea and a great idea. And in the business world, a great idea is truly priceless. All right, we're going to do another trick. So with this one, wearing your hoop, I like it. With this hoop, get up again, please, if you'd like to, and find about an arm's length of space on either side of you. You're welcome to use the area behind you again. And this is kind of a peaceful, meditative one in a way. It's going to just be a simple toss like this. But before we even toss, just in your dominant hand, practice a bit what this motion feels like. You'll notice my thumb is straight up vertical. It's not like pointing back there, or my hoop's going to hit the person behind me. So right here, I just want to whee, whee. You can make the noise or not, but just tossing. Whee, there you go. Caw-caw, caw-caw. There we go. And maybe you want to find a partner who's about 4 to 5 feet away from you, someone you met at lunch, the cutie sitting near you, or a new friend altogether. And maybe you just want to toss your hoop to a partner. Tossing over here. Double hoops even. Nice, nicely done. Good way to make new friends. introduction, I had worked in a career of broadcast media sales for 5 years. And in a lot of ways, I loved that job because I liked the challenge of it, and I liked that there were always new experiences for me every day. But the truth of broadcast media sales was that the majority of people I spoke to were going to tell me no. And most people would say no multiple times before it resulted in a sale. Where I think that I really excelled in that career was that my job felt like a game to me. I was able to show up at work, and instead of having this pit of fear when I went on sales calls and feeling like I absolutely had to close that deal or my life was over, I instead went into sales calls thinking that it was an opportunity to play and explore and try out new sales tactics. And I also had a friend that I worked closely with in sales, which made a huge difference as well. And it parallels my experiences in the hula hoop and with adult play. So working in an hour of play a week, that's a really great start if you're someone who maybe doesn't have too much play and recreation in your life. That's a great goal. And maybe at some point it would work up to a half hour or an hour of play a day. But to truly feel the whole benefits of adult play, one must infuse their entire life with it. Bring a playful attitude everywhere you go, an open mind. Finding fun and enjoyment in our work lives truly will unlock the power of play. So thank you for hooping with me today. I teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays here in town if you're interested in learning more about it. But if not, I'm sure there's an awesome activity that resonates with each of you, and I really encourage you to go and explore it. Thank you.
All right, big thanks to Erin for a little hula hooping in the middle of the afternoon. So when we generate energy before we get ready for our next speaker, it's good if we focus that energy. So now I'm going to invite Miss Kate Shadell up here, and she's going to lead us through a focusing activity. Kate's from here in Missoula. She's the GM of Athleta and is also a yoga instructor at Sweatshop Studios. So Kate, come on out.
Thank you, Shannon. Hello, everybody. So as Shannon said, I'm managing the Athleta, and so one of the important things, whether you're leading or an artist or creating or innovating or an entrepreneur in what you do, it's pretty imperative that you're in the right mindset. In my world, I now manage a team of 27 women in a store of 2,500 square feet, so it's pretty critical that I'm like in the right space to be ready to drive my business and be able to handle my team. So one of those ways to do that is to have 1 minute of meditation, of quiet time to yourself. So that's what we're going to practice right now to resettle you guys. So I'm going to ask you all to come slightly forward towards the edge of your seat. For some of you, this is going to be extremely uncomfortable and feel like 20 minutes instead of 1 minute, and some of you, it's going to feel like 15 seconds. So come to a comfortable seat. Both feet are flat on the ground so that you're not going to be fidgeting or twitching in any way. And then place either both of your hands on each of your knees or just holding them within themselves in your lap, somewhere that you're comfortable. Think of growing tall through the crown of your head, but you're still relaxed. Close your eyes and find your breath. Ideally, you're going to be breathing through your nose. If the smoke is bothering you and you're stuffy, it's okay to breathe through your mouth. It's fine. Find your own practice. And just focus on your breathing. Let your attention come to your breathing, but don't let that be where your mind goes. If you find that your mind wanders and it goes somewhere else, just bring it back to your breath. Breathing in and breathing out. You're not forcing your breath, you're just naturally breathing. So we're gonna go for 1 minute, and here we go. And that's your 1 minute. So for some of you, that could be a really long time, and for some of you, that's nothing. But it's really important for you to take the time if you find that your mind is wandering or you're not focusing. The whole point of this is actually to shorten the practice so that it becomes one breath that you can refocus and do what you need to do. But hope that was a good resettle for you guys. Thank you.
All right, I think we've established some presence in the room, so let's go ahead and roll into our next speaker. My privilege to announce that we've got Kira Davis coming up next. She is the Director of Academic and Government Relations at Launchpad Central, whose mission encompasses empowering universities in the public sector with lean methods to support their commercialization efforts. She also co-founded Vaz, a social enterprise that brings Chilean textiles to New York Fashion Week and high street boutiques in 8 countries. So give it up. Let's welcome Kira to the stage.
Hi. It is so good to be with you today, and I'm so honored to be here. I'm Kira Davis, and I'm here to tell you a few stories. I've had a storied past few years. I went from politics to entrepreneurship, from fashion to technology, and I'm here to tell some stories about the early days of starting this company in southern Chile, bringing Mapuche textiles to high fashion boutiques. And it was this like entirely crazy experiment. And an experiment that's still going and going well. But I wanted to share some of the stories from the early days when things were pretty scary and not that certain, because we all go through these moments where it looks like nothing's going to work and everything's going wrong. So let's go back to the beginning. In 2011, my childhood best friend, Jasmine Aarons, and I joined forces to bring fair trade indigenous fashion to metropolitan boutiques and jobs to one of the poorest regions in southern Chile. That company, Vaz, now employs something like 50 women. We are in 8 countries, 40 boutiques, and distribute online. The world today is still scary uncertain, but these stories are from just the very, very beginnings. So we started when my partner, Jasmine, was at the Stanford D School, and she was given a fellowship to go down to southern Chile to work with the Cholchol Foundation, which was one of the huge fair trade giants that worked with hundreds of Mapuche weavers. It was the only foundation that did this. And they sold the kind of textiles that are like very endemic to your markets. And she went down to help them kind of bring their design levels up a bit. So, you know, the things that we come to expect in modern fashion, put pockets on the insides of purses, the linings that you'd expect, kind of more typical fashions. And so she went down and did this co-design process, created prototypes, and brought them to fair trade shows, and these fashions sold like crazy. These are some of the examples from the very first days of prototyping with the Cholchol Foundation. And anyway, so she was emboldened. They sold like crazy and brought the orders back to the foundation, and they just didn't have the organizational resources to fulfill the orders or to do the work that's required to kind of bring new lines to season year after year. And so she approached me and said, I have this crazy idea. People want fashion that they can feel good about, not just all of this fast fashion that we're seeing. And these women really need jobs. So we were young and naive and decided to go marry these two needs and bring this company to market. So the first thing that we needed was funds. We were lucky enough to get $40,000 from the Chilean government through a program called Startup Chile. And while I'd been working on operations in the US, we decided that it made sense for me to come down and work with her and work with the weavers. And I'd been doing some trade shows in the States, and so I came to Santiago with these 2 huge suitcases of textiles, and we spent some time with the other entrepreneurs and then promptly decided that we needed to go down south to work with the weavers to finish our collection so that we could raise our next round of funding. And there's this thing that happens in startups, particularly when you're working in a developing context, where nothing goes according to plan, absolutely nothing. And so we found out just as we were headed to southern Chile that Jasmine actually had to leave the country to get a new visa, because we needed a temporary residency visa so that she could A, stay in the country, which was important to doing work, and B, get internet, because we couldn't get internet without a residency. So she left the country and went to Argentina, which was delayed due to volcanic ash because everything was going wrong. And I was at the bus terminal in Santiago and went to the bus stop, and it turned out that we had switched tickets. So this was particularly, this was a difficult voyage to be doing. And so let me just give you a little bit of context. My Spanish was terrible, practically non-existent. And Chilean Spanish, particularly Southern Chilean Spanish, is very hard to understand. This was a multi-part trip. It was 10 hours to this tiny little town where I'd wait from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. for a local bus that would take me 40 minutes to another town, where then I would walk 20 minutes with my huge bags of textiles to scale a fence and then gain access to this house that I'd never been to before, which didn't have heat or water. So anyways, this was the beginning of it when I go to the bus and I learn that my ticket isn't for that same day. And so I have this choice. I was like, oh, I could go back to the Startup Chile office and spend the night there and go on the bus the next day. Or I could just get another ticket now. And so I decided to get another ticket. Jasmine had left me with one item. Here's some more fashion. One item with me as she left, because my Spanish was so terrible. It was this Paddington Bear note. Did anyone read the book Paddington Bear? So, I mean, it was literally in Spanish. Hi, my name is Kira Davis. This is my passport number. I am going to this address. I don't speak any Spanish. Please help me get there. That was the note that I was carrying on this particular adventure. So I went to the ticket counter and I showed the lady my Paddington Bear note saying, I need to get here. And she, assured me that there was one last bus going out that evening. And I get on the bus and I'm relieved that at least the first 10-hour part of this journey has commenced. And then I have this realization that I'm hurtling in a piece of metal down the length of Chile. I don't have a phone and there's no explicit stops. And completely freaked out. So I remember the details of this trip kind of in funny order. So this is what a Chilean bus looks like. They're actually quite nice. They were much nicer than I expected. And they have these lovely little televisions. I slept for the first few minutes of the trip and then was terrified that I was going to oversleep my stop or something. So I stayed up kind of vigilantly watching the time, which was a terrible idea. They were playing a terrible cheesy sports movie on the television. I was judiciously using my Dell laptop, which was considered a laptop, but probably would be considered a desktop by today's standards, writing my co-founder tormented letters, which I reread, preparing for this talk. And somewhere about 9 hours in, I just lose it. I start crying. I was afraid that I was going to be literally kind of lost in the outback of Chile for some unknown period of time, and didn't have a phone and didn't have internet. And it was just in that moment that this man emerged who spoke English and who's the only English-speaking person on the bus. And I was just immediately relieved. And I passed him my Paddington Bear note, and he assured me that my stop was coming up in about 30 minutes. He would talk to the driver. He would arrange that the bus would stop. And he sat with me until he kind of guided me off the bus in the 5 a.m. darkness and pointed me to that gas station that I was supposed to wait at. And I was just so enormously grateful. So then there was another hour and change in that gas station and many bitten nails. And that little rickety 12-seater stick shift local bus arrived. And I found my stop. It was covered in bougainvillea. That's how I knew it was my stop. And used the back of my Paddington Bear note which had a handwritten map on it, and found our studio, scaled the fence, got in the front door. It was very cold, and so anyways, I just basically, still completely dressed and wrapped up in like long coats, fell in bed and slept for many, many hours. And that was my first adventure to Chile. So sometime later in that afternoon, I made it out of the house. It was the summertime here, which means south of the equator, it's like the dead of winter. And there was a wood-burning stove, but this city girl didn't know how to build a fire. There were 2 gas canisters that you could attach to either the kitchen or the bathroom, but I didn't know how to attach them to either one. And so the first thing that I did is I headed out of the house and tried to find internet, where I called my then boyfriend via Skype and again sobbed for what felt like a very long time. And he offered me, I just told him, I was like, I can't do this, I'm not strong enough, I need to come home. And at this point, actually coming home was quite a hurdle because I had just been through a 10-hour bus ride, and so I knew exactly what it would take to get back to Santiago, to get to a plane, to come home. But I didn't care, I was just like, I can't. I was stretched at every capacity. And, oh, that's the gas station. And there we are in southern Chile. And he said this thing to me where he was like, you're okay, and you've just had the hardest part of your journey, and the rest of it's going to go up from here. And I wasn't sure if it was true, but I thought it helped me to believe that it was true. And so I left the internet cafe and got myself my first meal in 24 hours. And immediately things started turning up. As soon as I got home, this neighbor came over, and she saw me kind of scurrying around the house, dressed in my full coat. And she came in and she said, "Are you cold?" And I lied to her and told her I wasn't, even though I was completely bundled. And she took my face in her hands and said, "I don't believe you," and blew past me, built a fire, and made me some tea and sat me down on the couch. And we all did this in broken English and broken Spanish. And it's one of the sweetest gestures I think I've ever received. So what did I take away from this experience? I learned about my edges and what it felt like to push against every one of them. I was exhausted, spiritually spent, financially strapped. We haven't talked about that part, but as an entrepreneur, that's just often the case. I was out of my comfort zone with language, technology, and culture. I was dragged out and looked that way when I talked to Kai, my ex-boyfriend. He told me I looked like a domestic violence victim. But I had reached my edges and found that I was okay, and there was a lot of power in that. And more to the point, inside of these edges, when I felt very alone, when I had access to no one inside this bus and didn't feel like I knew anyone in the region, I just found that I wasn't alone, that in the moment that I really needed someone, there was that man on the bus or the woman who helped build a fire. And it was beautiful to feel supported by that. I find that this is often the case of entrepreneurship, that if you're doing it right, you face these edges again and again. Though starting the trip was clearly the hardest part of the trip, it was not the only challenge. We had a number of other challenges. During one of our first design meetings, we had asked the weavers to bring in prototypes for different products they were working on, and several of them didn't bring anything in. And we asked them why they hadn't brought anything in, and they said, well, the weaving spirits didn't come. Oops, sorry. And that was the beginning of many conversations that we had about how to understand context, set expectations, work within constraints, and make sure that everyone was happy, including the weaving spirits. Another issue we had was around time, that we were really committed in our heart to being fair trade certified. And being fair trade certified meant that we needed to offer these women a living wage, according to the standards of Chile at the time. But when we asked these women to tell us how long it took them to do a particular thing, they would say, oh, it took me 3 days, it took me a week, it took me 3 weeks. To which we would ask, were you working an hour on it a day? Were you working 8 hours a day? Like this is a big thing when you're talking about your costs. And they couldn't say, because the way that weaving fit in their lives was kind of in the gills and in between things, right? So they would weave before the horses needed tending to, and after lunch was put on the table for their families, and after their kids went to bed. But it wasn't something that they were keeping a clock on. And so, there was this moment where we had this question of like what it meant to be culturally sensitive. Could we give them watches? Could we give them stopwatches? Did we need to approach this in another way entirely, which is ultimately what we did. But there was lots of these negotiations going forward. So why were we doing this? I mean, it was cool to do this alchemy, to make sheep wool into fashion, and that's fun. But that wasn't really where our heart was. Our heart was with these women. This is Veronica. She was one of our fastest and most skilled weavers. And she's very representative of the region. So most people in this region have no more than a third-grade education. Their families for generations have lived off subsistence agriculture. But their children are starting to want something else. They want to go to school for longer. They want vocations that require more training. And it's things that this lifestyle can't sustain because education is expensive. Having a child that's not working on the farm is expensive, providing books, etc. And so one of the things that they're facing is that these women were going from, they were trying to support their families, and so they would leave their families and go to bigger cities and do things like wash fruit or watch other people's children to send money back so that their children could have more opportunities. And what we were really passionate about doing was giving them work to do in their own community that was culturally sensitive and provide opportunities for their children. And so this is a little dark, but you can see Veronica is on the right, and that's her daughter, and that's her mother. Her husband hasn't been around for years, which is kind of the state of a lot of families down there. And that's my partner, Jasmine. And we were privileged enough to go spend some time with them in their home. But you could see this loom was literally, like in her living room. And so that's where she got to go to work. And then she would bring in her textiles, once a week so that we could collect them for inspection. So now I am at Launchpad Central, where I'm lucky enough to work with entrepreneurs all over the world. We work with, in over 90 countries, at 200 universities and different government agencies and accelerators and big businesses. And we help companies kind of match what it is that they want to do with the market needs. And I feel really honored to get to do this work. They get to go from just executing to searching where the market is going and how they can best tailor their talents and their offerings. And whenever I get to travel for work, this was a trip last year to Kuwait where I got to work with a group of Middle Eastern entrepreneurs from MIT, I'm just so inspired by what it takes to do this outside the country. And it's just a different thing. And I wanted to share one small story from that. This is, we're in Kuwait at the mall, and this woman is starting the Craigslist for the Middle East so that students can share their old beds and desks and things when they leave. And she's eager to get feedback. And so she literally goes to the mall with it's very rude to approach people and could constitute getting arrested or worse. So she wanted a way to bring people to her so that she could have these conversations to find her customers. And so she literally strapped a sign to her back so that people would come to her. And she talked to over 50 people this day doing this, which I just think is amazing. What have I learned from some of these adventures? I just thought I'd share a few things. What is the last safe investment? You Are the Last Safe Investment, and this is actually a great book if you haven't read it, by Michael Ellsberg. But in the phase where financial markets and real estate markets are doing different things than we've ever seen them before. Every industry is being upended. Investing in yourself, your own skills, your network, your community, this is where you're going to see the biggest gains. And we're just kind of feeling this to be true all over. Doing entrepreneurship really takes an artist's heart. I think that sometimes we think about that business is like from business school and that you have to have knowledge about financials. And this is kind of true, but like the only way that this really works is if you're in it to build a different kind of future and you are using your paintbrush of entrepreneurship to do it. If people are just in it for the financials, it breaks down very quickly, and I've seen that time and time again. This is one of my favorite quotes in general, but also from Eleanor Roosevelt, and this applies to the men too. But women are like tea bags. You don't know how strong they are until you put them in hot water. The entrepreneurship is the hot water that we learn about our edges, and you don't know your strength until you're faced with them. And anyways, I love this analogy. And this is the last thing. This is actually from 2 blocks away from my home in San Francisco, between 23rd and 24th on Valencia. And it's obviously Frida Kahlo. Nothing is absolute. Everything changes, everything moves, everything revolves, and everything flies and goes away. Again, we're in this moment where the future is coming very, very quickly, and industries are changing shape quickly. And as soon as you think that you have it figured out and one model is working, the next model is already emerging because it has to, because the future is coming that quickly. And this is the story of entrepreneurship. It is always the story of your creativity against constraints. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed sharing with you today.
All right. Thank you so much, Kira. Moving into the twilight hours, I assure you, cocktail hours right around the corner. So stay present with me here. Before we get moving on our next performers, I wanted to take a quick minute to revisit the pitch contest that's happening tomorrow, co-sponsored by our founding partner, Missoula Federal Credit Union, along with the ranch at Rock Creek. So deal is only people who are attending this conference are eligible for this competition. It is a 1-minute pitch competition. The winner receives a free stay at Rock Creek Ranch, right? So that's an awesome opportunity. In order to access information about that competition, you're going to need to visit elbicon.com. You'll see this highlighted in red as one of tomorrow afternoon's community meetup options. You're going to need to select that, and it's going to bring up additional information about the event. Go ahead and scroll to the bottom, and you'll find a link. On that link, you'll find information. You do have to submit your name by midnight tonight in order to be eligible. Okay, so go ahead. When you get on there, go all the way down to the bottom. You'll find the link. That's where you get information on how you get your name entered in, and as well as information about how they'll be doing judging. So if anybody has any more questions about that, feel free to grab somebody with a volunteer shirt or one of the liaison, and they can help you figure it out. So our next act coming up here is Bear Bait. Founded in the fall of 2011, Bear Bait Dance offers fresh, original, professional dance works in Montana for Montanans. Under the direction of Joy French and Kelly Buma, Bear Bait Dance Company aims to increase the availability of contemporary dance to both the Missoula community as well as rural Montanans, build an accessibility to dance, collaborate directly with local artists, strengthen the Montana dance community, and present performers and choreographers from around the region and nation in order to cultivate a richer appreciation for contemporary dance and the dance field as a whole. So please join me in welcoming Bear Bait to the stage.
Thanks. That was such a great introduction. My name is Joy French, and I'm one of the directors of Bear Bait, and it's such an honor to be able to be part of this first annual, I'm sure, conference. And I would like to say you are invited to watch from the second tier if you feel like you can't see very well. Sometimes being below dancers are not always the best angle, so if you feel like shaking out your legs and going to the second tier, it might be a better view, maybe not. So this is the company. And I bet we're going to get some lights on them. Oh, there's some lights. Beautiful. And when we were invited, they said we could do anything for 15 minutes. And so I was like, oh, okay, so we have lots of different things in our bag of tricks. And I was really inspired when I started looking at the conference more about the tagline that talks about dreamers and thinkers and creators and innovators. So we decided to kind of go that route. And because I realized as the creator and founder of Bear Bait Dance, I kind of went through all those stages. So we created a score, and you're going to see kind of what we're going to be working with, and we're going to build it into more of a dance as we go. So the raw material is them, and then these 4 words. So we started with dreaming, and when I was creating Bear Bait, it was just this like lofty thing, you know, as when you're thinking of startups and ideas of the vision, it feels like there's a lot of momentum in your brain, but who knows where it's really going to go, and you're thinking about all these risks you might take and whatnot, and it feels really ambiguous. Like, what are they doing? They're just flowing around, and that's how the dreaming stage felt to me. And then I moved into the thinking stage of like organizing and planning and spreadsheets and whatnot, and that felt very exact and very precise, but still very kind of lonely and by myself. And so then the next stage was to get the company and actually have an audition and start creating. And for that, it's really about having something or someone, I think, to create with or for, and to have material. So my material are bodies, for the most part, as a director of dance. And so I'm creating on bodies and with bodies often. So getting into the studio. And then the next stage, which I love this, that they gave me these 4 words so I could talk about this now, was really the innovation. And I think that innovation for us with Bear Bait was coming together as a community. And I feel like I could only create in the studio for so long until I needed more of the community aspect, and I needed a team of individuals who could help me like envision and go forward into that next stage of maybe dreaming or whatever. So we have then the community aspect of all coming together with a common goal. Aren't they great? They just like do what I say. Yeah, it's so good. Okay, so now we're gonna put it more into a dance land. So we're gonna start with them being in lanes. And so they're gonna come down, and they are only just gonna stay in their lane, and they're gonna try to go through those 4 aspects of dreaming, thinking, creating, and innovating. And we'll see how that goes, and just so you get a chance to see them without me being distracting in front. So we'll have our first sound, Isaac. Nice. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. So I told them they had to stay in their lanes, right? And so by the end, we didn't feel any unity quite yet, right? And I feel like often in the arts community, and maybe you find this in your own field, that sometimes we can be really separate as artists. And then there's that place of we need each other at some point to move forward into the next thing. I can't make a show happen without my tech, and I can't make a show happen without collaborating with musicians, and I can't make a show happen without audience. But sometimes I think we isolate ourselves in the arts a little bit and say no, I am the visionary and I am the one and I am going to take this on, and then it ends up kind of just feeling like chaos. So we're going to do this again, and they're going to try that score, but now I'm going to let them come together. So when they need each other to create and innovate, they're allowed, and they don't have to stay in those lanes. Because I do think there's something about dreaming and thinking that needs to be a solo act. at some point, and then you need to be able to come together. So for the second piece of music, they're going to be able to do that. I have to say that version is so much more satisfying to me than the first, where it's like randomness and a line, and they're doing it, but what are we looking at? And then it organizes. So we have one last version to show you today, and this one is honoring the fact that although it's nice to say dreaming, thinking, creating, innovating, it tends to not be that linear, of course, as we know, and that once it kind of gets rolling, it all happens all together all the time. So this is going to be a more open score, and the dancers are going to have a lot more freedom to move between those four movement scores. And for the first half of the piece, I'm going to direct, because I do think there's something about bear bait, and often in small organizations as well as large, that you do need a director's eye. So I'm going to give them cues, and you'll hear me. And then I'm going to let them take it, and I'll tell them that they get to take it. And with the information I've provided, they're going to take it and continue on, only they're going to internally score it. So they'll take the information and the guidance that I give in the first half and use it in the second. So as we let the kind of organization of a company and of our company grow, I give them a lot of empowerment to help out and to find the next vision. So we're kind of mimicking that too, and that'll be our last dance for you today. All right, third piece of music. Solo. So great. Thank you so much for the conference, for inspiring all that movement that they beautifully did. We're doing lots of shows and lots of good things online too, and we're continuing to brainstorm how to take this company and our company into the 21st century with online, and how do we make dance and art happen there when we're used to making it happen in this kind of setting. And so we're doing lots of fun things if you're interested to check us out. But thank you so much for letting us share a little bit of dance with you today. Thank you.
All right, let's give it up one more time for Bear Bait. That was awesome. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Okay, we're rounding the corner. Is this thing on? Are we live? Did you turn me down? You guys can hear me without it, though, can't you? I know. This isn't news to me. Whatever this little divot is, but no, like below your nose. I had an ex-boyfriend once tell me that mine is so pronounced because God was like, shh. Ex-boyfriend, by the way. Okay, so super excited to introduce you to our final speaker for the afternoon. Next up, we have Mark Roberge. He's the Chief Revenue Officer of HubSpot's sales division. He's also the best-selling author of the award-winning book, The Sales Acceleration Formula, Using Data, Technology, and Inbound Selling to Go from 0 to 100 million. I'm in. Mark is also a senior lecturer in the Entrepreneurial Management Unit at Harvard Business School, where he teaches entrepreneurial sales and marketing in the second-year MBA program. Mark was previously the Senior Vice President of Worldwide Sales and Services at HubSpot, and Forbes has marked him as one of Forbes' top 30 social sellers in the world. You guys, let's go ahead and give it up for Mark.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks, folks, for having me out. Glad it worked out. A little bit of serendipity. I actually booked the trip out to Montana about 4 months ago to do the annual visit to see my brother here, Matt Roberge, and his family. I've got 2 boys, 8 and 9. So we're doing all the Montana things. You guys have a beautiful state. We left my wife at home. She's taking a class, a master's program. And spent the first half of the week up at Ashley Lake. Anyone know where Ashley Lake is? My brother's father-in-law is going to kill me that I mentioned this lake on stage because he thinks it's like the secret of the... I don't think he knows that Google Maps exists and you can like just research this stuff. And then we did a float yesterday in Blackfoot River. Do I have that right? Caught 1 fish. My 8-year-old brought in a bow. That's what you call a rainbow trout, right? I'm not a fisherman. Sorry. But yeah, the 8-year-old took it home yesterday. So I'm stoked to be here. My brother had mentioned in the weeks leading up to the visit, he's like, you know, there's an awesome conference coming out that week, and would you like to see if the folks there would like to have you as a speaker? I'm like, yeah, it'd be great. I've got this canned speech. It's like 30 minutes. I've done it like 800 times over the last few years. It'll be perfect. And so the last few weeks, they were like, oh, this would be great, Mark, come out. This is going to be fantastic. And then I was like, hey, who do I send my slide deck to? And they're like, what do you mean slide deck? I'm like, well, I'm going to talk about like building sales teams. I'm going to do my whole thing. I'm like, yeah, you know, we really want you to do a dance, right? So hit it, guys. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not doing a dance. Especially that was an awesome job, and I could never follow that. No, but they were like, you know, this conference is really about, it's about community and courage, and we really want to get to know the real you. So I've never done this speech before, which is a little nerve-wracking, but I'm just going to give you kind of like the life run-through of me as an entrepreneur. Hopefully it'll inspire a couple things. And I did a lot of soul searching on the mountains this week and try to find a pattern from some of these stories that may be some lessons learned for you that you can take back to your businesses, your artists, venues, etc. So I started my career as a mechanical engineer. That's what I studied undergrad. And I went to a big company in New York City called Accenture, which was like a big consulting firm. Anybody start or went into big consulting before? 60,000 people globally. It was a cool opportunity. I mean, literally, these people can like go through 10 years of a career. You're in your early 30s making $1 million a year. You could literally do that. And I'll tell you, I was writing code. I hated it. Hated every second of it. You're on a plane 5-6 times a week, and I had this nightmare looking ahead to my life and what it was going to be. I mean, we're so blessed here in the U.S. in terms of the opportunities that we have and benefits and getting these jobs, et cetera. But like, it felt like a higher form of slavery to me, to have to go through this next multiple decades and what kind of life that would be for me, what kind of life that would be for my family. And that's where I got turned on to this vision of entrepreneurship for 2 reasons. One, due to the autonomy that it would give me in a career, in sort of the financial independence and the ability to be a better father and a better husband down the road. And number two, just the so much fun of waking up every morning and feeling like you have the opportunity to change the world. And so I was really attracted to this thing. And lucky enough, a couple executives from Accenture went off and started a mobile software company in New York. And I jumped on board as the 10th employee. Thing completely failed. This was the year 2000. And remember, 2001 was right around the corner, right? It was a huge economy bust. And so I watched this thing raise $20 million, scale up to 200 people, and back down to 10 people in the matter of like 15 months. Now, fortunately, I was one of the 10 that were selected to stick around. And even though it was a complete failure, I loved every second of it for all the reasons that I said, of being able to wake up in the morning and do what I wanted to do and feel like I was changing the world and wear whatever clothes I wanted to wear and work with whoever I wanted to work with, and everything, all that kind of sort of professional autonomy. And so I was like, I am going to do this. This is my new career. I found my passion. And now in my mid-20s, for some reason I thought, like, if I could spend 2 years, over the next 2 years, doing something that would be on my resume at the age of 50, what would it be? Like, unless I get lucky and join the next Google, I think I should go and try to get a top MBA. And I'm just sharing, this is how I was thinking as a mid-20-year-old. If you're in your mid-20s, I don't necessarily think you should go and try to get a top MBA, but that's just what I thought to do. And so I figured, like, if I can get into a really good MBA school, that's something that's going to be on my resume at 45, and I'll be applying to jobs, and they'll kind of note that and be like, yeah, that's kind of important. So I applied to Harvard and Stanford and MIT and Wharton, and I got in nowhere. Nowhere. 4 denials. I think a lot of people at that point would have been like, all right, I didn't get into business school. But I was like, screw that. I learned how to apply to business school. And I learned what they wanted to see, right? I had a really good GMAT. I had what I thought was good, like really high GPA from undergrad, big company experience, small company experience in New York. I thought it was pretty cool. But they really wanted a unique individual. And that opened up my eyes to sort of nonconformity and changed my life of, like, up until then, I feel like I just was swimming in these channels that were derived by my peer group. Like, they were all going to consulting, I should go into consulting. They were all studying engineering, I should study engineering. And I realized that really opened up my ideas. I was like, I should just be me. And I, from then on out, was just obsessed with nonconformity and obsessed with, like, if I found myself doing stuff that everybody else was doing, I really had to second guess that. There might be something wrong. And that's really opened up a lot of doors for me over the next 15 years or so. So I went back and I was like, I realized they just wanted someone unique. And I had this idea that I hadn't pursued. At the time, all these really talented web designers and tech people were out of work because all these companies were falling apart. And at the same time, the internet revolution was still cooking, even the economy was not. And so I just put those two together, where there was all these amazing nonprofits like Schools for the Deaf and organizations putting together low-income housing and YMCA branches that needed websites but didn't have the money to build them. And I just built this nonprofit that put these out-of-work tech folks to work. And we built hundreds of websites across hundreds of volunteers, and it was a lot of fun, and I loved it, and I got to flex my entrepreneur muscle. And sure enough, the next year I applied to business school with this really unique story. I applied to Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Dartmouth, and Yale, and got into MIT, Dartmouth, and Yale. And I didn't get into Harvard and Stanford. They said no again. So that was interesting. And I loved the experience at MIT. It furthered my sort of truth that I was really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I literally started 5 businesses in 2 years at MIT. I did the semifinalist competition for the $50,000 business plan competition with 2 Chinese students and learned all about China. All my peers who were these crazy type A, super smart people were begging student affairs to take more classes than the maximum allowable credits. I just took the minimum course load the whole time. And I spent the extra time working with startups in Boston just because, I wanted to make a little extra money, and I also wanted to have that practitioner experience while I was going through the classroom. And fortunately, so I took this class called New Enterprises, where 50 students show up, and you all show up with a business idea, and you write up your idea on one page, and that night, everybody votes on 3 ideas, and you can't vote on your idea. And the top 10 ideas get picked to run and build their business that semester, write a business plan, and everybody else jumps on board. So my idea got picked. It was 2005. Don't laugh, it was a social networking site for pet owners and their pets called PawSpot. Pre-Twitter, pre-Facebook, pre-LinkedIn, pre-all this stuff. I was just like, yeah, this is really cool to pull together. And I went through that experience. I got to meet like all these people defining the social networking world. I met the founders of LinkedIn. I met the founders of Craigslist. And one day someone was like, yeah, they're starting this thing over at Harvard called Facebook. You should go talk to those guys. And so I went over. Has anyone seen The Social Network, the movie? Remember Eduardo, the guy from South America that was one of the co-founders that kept pushing Mark Zuckerberg to do revenue? I had beers with him for like 3 hours where they had just launched, I think, Harvard and Stanford, and were about to launch like American University. He was telling me all about like latent demand and all this kind of stuff. At the end, I was like, so were you one of the engineers? He's like, no, I'm the co-founder. And like, I don't know where those guys end up later. I went back to my professor at MIT. I was like, you know, I just met these guys at Harvard. They're starting a thing called Facebook. It's really taken off. We should have him in as a guest speaker. And he was like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, right? He can't pick them all. He can't pick them all. All right, so I got this thing. I got picked to do PawSpot. And fortunately, there was another guy in my class named Dharmesh Shah, an Indian introvert, real shy guy. And he got picked too, and his idea was HubSpot. It's really different from the company HubSpot we know today. But we hit it off, and we grabbed Chinese food as friends every other week and just talked about our adventures. And at the end of the class, I said, you know, Dharmesh, I'm going to do PawSpot. I'm going to start this company after school. I'm not going to apply for jobs. He's like, great. He made a little bit of money in a last startup. He's like, I will invest in your company. But I would like you to work for HubSpot 1 day a week. I know it's just me and a business plan, but I'd like you to come by every Thursday and help me with my business. And so that's what I agreed to do. And I raised $1 million for my PawSpot company, and I hired 6 engineers, and I went at it hardcore for 1.5 years, hired and built that site. And then I worked at HubSpot every Thursday. And this guy, Brian Halligan, joined the HubSpot team. He's now their CEO. He came out of venture capital. The minute he met me, he's like, Mark, I'm really glad we have you for 1 day a week, but forget about the strategic work. I just want you to sell. If you have you for 1 day a week, I just want you to sell, bring in customers, and I'm like, hey, you're paying me, whatever you want me to do, I'll go sell. So that 1.5 years unfolded, and life started to happen to me. You know, my wife and I got pregnant. We had a baby. In January, she actually had the baby. I was watching and there supporting. And then 4 months later, we got pregnant again. How many parents are in the room? Okay. 4 months later, pregnant again. Not recommended, but definitely a blessing in the end. And we had to buy a house to put all these babies in. So like you have to picture like my life. I just graduated MIT. I took $100,000 in loans. I do not come from money. I got a baby on the way. I bought this house. I've got this startup, and it's not working. Failing. I'm going out. I'm pitching people. I've raised $1 million. We're running out of money. I'm trying to get the Series A, and it's just not working. And I'm like gulping and be like, I'm going to have to go back to the big company, give up on my dream. And then fortunately, I think the next week, Brian Halligan, it's Brian and Dharmesh at HubSpot, and Brian sent me an email. He's like, you know, Mark, you should quit your startup and come here and join the company and build the sales team. We're doing well. You're doing an awesome job selling. I probably brought in 40 customers in that year selling 1 day a week. He's like, we're going to raise a Series A, $5 million, and we just hired Mike Volpe, our marketing guy. We want you to be our sales guy. Just come over and do this. And so, of course, I was like, inside, I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. You know, I can get 2 months' salary, just pay off some of these bills, work with a couple entrepreneurs. That's all I was thinking. So I put on my best Texas Hold'em face and pretended like I was like, oh, but my startup's going so well. You know, like, you have to pay top dollar to get me to come over. So I negotiated a good deal and came in and did that. And literally, I was just thinking, get 2 months' salary, get 2 months' salary. And 10 years later, I was still rocking at the company. I just recently left this summer, and I'll talk about that. But what a journey it was, and I'm going to tell you a couple of stories from it. I spent the first 7 years running global sales. Now, granted, I never ran sales. I never worked in sales before. Never worked in sales. And so I scaled that company to $100 million in revenue, and I hired my staff. I got about 450 people working for me across like 3 different continents. It was a crazy experience. So I'll tell you a little bit now. Like, we took the company public 2 years ago. Got to go up on the New York Stock Exchange and ring the bell. That was quite a life moment for me. And the company today is worth $2 billion. So it's just like very, very blessed and fortunate that I got that email and sat in that seat and worked at HubSpot on the side through that journey. And so I had been known as this guy that was like never worked in sales before and was an engineer and applied all these principles of data and science that were never applied to sales before. And I wrote a book about that called The Sales Acceleration Formula, and it fortunately became a #1 bestseller just because I wanted to share. To be quite honest, I kept getting calls from entrepreneurs to ask me what I did and ask me all these questions, and I'd take these phone calls on the way into work, and the way back I had like an hour commute, and every friggin' phone call was the same. It was like the same questions and the same answers, and they were really helpful. The entrepreneurs would write me later and be like, that was awesome advice, like we did it and it's really working. So I'm like, I just have to write a book about this. And so I did, and really fortunate, it became a #1 Amazon bestseller. I did donate all the proceeds to this organization called Build.org. Does anyone know what Build? They're not here in Montana. Do you know? Okay, yeah, because you're in San Francisco, right? So they started in San Francisco, and what they do is they choose the worst neighborhoods in a major city, kids that did not have the decks that we probably had growing up, and probably going to end up on the street in Gaines. And they expose them to entrepreneurship during their high school experience, 4 years. And they all start a company during those 4 years. And they literally build a business, build a product, and go sell product. The graduation rate from high school and matriculation rate into college of those kids that do the program is like 99% graduation and 80% matriculation, which I'll tell you is way above the average for those high schools. It's like probably less than 50%. So very involved in that organization, and psyched. Any support for the book goes to them. So finally, I put this book out, and I asked this professor at Harvard to write a blurb on the back. He's like, well, I'll have to read it first. And so, yeah, you'd think, right? So he read the book, and he's like, this is great. Here's the blurb. I was like, great, I'll take you to lunch, so thank you. And I'd gone over there. I'd probably spent like 5% of my time when I was at HubSpot doing community things around speaking, like webinars, speeches. And I go to Harvard, MIT, Dartmouth, and all these places to teach classes as well, just because I enjoyed it. And I took this professor to lunch. He's like, would you ever consider teaching at Harvard? And I was like, I didn't know it was on the table. And he's like, well, I've seen you speak. I've seen you right now. There's huge demand for entrepreneurial sales. We'd love for you to come out and build a class here. I was like, you denied me twice as a student. And so anyway, I mean, that was a pinch me moment for me. Because I was really at the time, 10 years in now, that I wanted to go do something else. I was pretty much just going to do like consulting work and advisement work for startups, and this ended up being a great platform for me to do that. So that's been the journey. I feel like a very blessed individual, and I really enjoy coming out and trying to share some of those stories. So during the hiking, I tried to think about what are some of the patterns that I saw, or what are some of the things that, like, when I was going into my career, that I had perceptions of how the entrepreneur journey would be, and how are they different for me as I experienced them. And I think there's 2 broad ones. One is like pretty generic and consistent with what I heard, and one is way different than what I heard. The first one I'll give is the way different one, which is I always had something going on the side. And that thing that was going on the side led to my next success. You know what I mean? Like, that's way different than what I'd heard as advice, because everyone was always like, if you're gonna do this thing, you gotta be all in. You can't have one foot in. And I certainly didn't have like one foot in, but like when you think about it, I did that mobile startup in New York, but I was starting the nonprofit on the side. And that's what got me into business school. And then I was doing business school, but I always did the minimum course load, unlike my peers. And I was working for startups on the side and working on these businesses, and that's what got me to get my own startup as opposed to joining a company. And I was doing my own startup, but I was working for HubSpot 1 day a week on the side. And that's what got me into a failure, but like led to a success. And then I was at HubSpot, but I always took 5% of my time speaking and writing and doing this type of stuff that led to the Harvard thing. So I don't know. I'm just kind of coming up with this week, but like, there's been a little bit of talk about like the advantages of optionality in your career, and I think this is probably like a living example that, you know, maybe we should be thinking about certain decisions we're making in our career and how that opens up optionality for ourselves, right? The other one, generically speaking, that I think is very quintessential is failure is not failure, it's just an iteration, right? And I, you know, like I said, we're applying to business school, 4 denials. 4 applications, 4 denials. I think most people would be like, I didn't get into business school. But like, that was just an iteration. I learned about the process, I learned what they were looking for, I iterated, got in. Same with the startups. 2 failed startups, miserable. Just iterations. I was very blessed, fortunate, I didn't have to go back to the big company, got another shot at it, and I was able, so many VCs and investors, I thought like when you do fail, that would be a huge negative check mark. A lot of them don't want to invest in first-time entrepreneurs. They love failed entrepreneurs because of what you can actually learn from the experience. Right, so that's kind of the quintessential broad thing that I took away. Reflecting on the MIT experience, I want to talk about that New Enterprises class for a second. And again, remember that class was the 50 startup ideas, 10 get picked. The way the class worked was we did 2 to 3 sessions a week for like 20 weeks, and they brought in a different successful entrepreneur in every class. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is such an awesome class. I finally get to meet the top 1% of intellectual horsepower in this country. These are the people that went out, started businesses, and won. And I'll tell you, they were not the top 1% of the intellectual horsepower of the country. I was amazed at that. These were just people that the main conclusion that I took away from watching and listening to all these entrepreneurs was the difference they did versus 99.9% of the country is they put themselves in a position to be successful. They put themselves in a position to wake up and have their dreams fulfilled. And I can't tell you how many people, whether it's my mom who has a different idea for a Christmas decoration ornament that's going to make her $1 million, who never does it, or whether it's my buddy at MIT who decided to go to McKinsey instead of starting his company and said he'd start it after 5 years when he paid his bills and never looked back. Those represent most of the country that just never, they have the passion, the ideas, but they don't have the courage to take that step and put themselves in a position. And that's what these people did. And sure, it took a lot of hard work and some execution, and some of it was a lot of just luck, right? So good for you that you're probably more of you are in that 1% that take the leap and not the 99 that never take that jump. The other thing that I took away that I didn't know going into the experience was their flexibility to iterate on the idea. And I bet a lot of you entrepreneurs have heard that. But I've never met a successful entrepreneur. And I said, tell me about your story. And they were like, you know, I woke up one day and I had this awesome idea. And I went out and I built the product, or I implemented the idea. And I sold it and it took off like hotcakes. And I raised a bunch of money and we took it public or sold the company, and it was the exact same idea. Never, ever happened in my entire life. It's always like, you know, I had this idea, and I went out, and it was a really bad idea. I realized how bad of an idea it was, but I talked to the customers, and then I learned that this is really where the idea is, and we tried that, and it worked kind of well, but then we learned more, and it's just like this constant flexibility and iteration. And I think, like, for a lot of you, I've talked to some of you, you have some really awesome businesses going on. And maybe the way you could apply this is, how could you think bigger, and are you kind of stuck because of, like, these perceptions you've had going in? And let's just picture for a second, if you sold your business for a happy price right now, and were allowed to redo your business from scratch, or redo anything, given the knowledge you have today, the knowledge about what it takes to do a business. That's all the salt for the margaritas coming up, so I'm really excited for that. What it takes to, like, build this business, what the market is like, et cetera. And that might trigger some ideas on whether it's an expansion or extension or a slight iteration, that you should have a bold decision and go toward that, right? So, because again, I meet so many great entrepreneurs who, they've been in this business for 10 years and they're stuck and they're so much better than this. And I'm just like, dude, just sell it and do it again. And this particular advice applies to the tech folks that have a more vibrant venture capital. I've got so many friends who tried this business, doing okay, but they've been in it for 10 years, and we call them walking zombies, because they've raised so much money and it's just not gonna quite be that big hit, and I wish they would just sell it and do it again, because they don't realize that the effort to find that engineer lead or that sales lead or raise that money is gonna be 100 times easier this second time around, given their experience and the relationships they've made. So hopefully that might, that's really what I took away from that MIT and that entrepreneur class. So now let's go to HubSpot for a second. The first thing that I learned about HubSpot was the value of unique differentiation and trying to craft your own space. And this is applicable to any business. I've counseled and advised closely 6 businesses this year, gotten really deep with them. When I ask them what their unique, sustainable differentiation is, they do not know. And very few businesses do. And that's the first big thing I learned at HubSpot is when I got in there and I first met with Brian and Dharmesh about their strategy, and they explained it to me, and I was like, oh, you guys are a marketing automation company. Because the marketing automation space had been around for a little bit. And it was as if I swore at them when I said that. They're like, no, we're an inbound marketing company. I was like, what's inbound marketing? And it's like they were going to create their own meme, their own vocabulary to describe their business, to create a competitive advantage. And they were really inspired by Blue Ocean Strategy. Has anyone read Blue Ocean Strategy? It's an amazing entrepreneurial principle where what it represents, the blue ocean, it's almost like a bit of a fishing analogy where all the fishermen and the sharks are in this one area, and it's very competitive, and it's a bloody red ocean, because they're all fighting over the same fish. And little do they know, if they just sail around this island, there's this blue ocean over here where the fish are jumping and there's no other sharks and there's no other fishermen. And they can just really take everyone they want. And that's really what was representative here. Brian and Dharmesh's decision is there was this red ocean starting, market automation. And most entrepreneurs latch onto the red ocean with a slight iteration. But they had the balls, if I may say, to create the blue ocean, which is a huge risk. It's 3 guys in a garage, and we're creating an English word. Really hard. But if we pulled it off, we own the book, the conference, the first 10 pages of Google, the LinkedIn group, game over. No one can catch up. And put all of your effort into that. And I think that, for all 6 of the companies I've consulted with this year so far, that same opportunity exists for them. Is like, hey, have the balls to create a word that describes the revolution you're trying to start. Create a ton of content around it. Create the conference around it. And if that word takes off, like inbound marketing really took off for us, people did not want to just spam email out there that market automation allowed them to do. They wanted to build blogs and participate in social media and attract people to. And once they wanted that, their only option was HubSpot. They weren't going to buy anyone else. And believe me, lots of copycats tried to come out and start it. And competitors like Marketo and Eloqua tried to diversify themselves into it, but they couldn't because we own the meme. Right? So that was a huge learning for me around creating sustainable advantage and the principles of Blue Ocean. Another one that I learned there was how important culture was. I remember back at that New York mobile startup, one of the folks there was like, yeah, we need a culture committee. And the CEO was like, yeah, culture, you go do that. But like, it was too soft. And I realized the importance of it when we got to about 100 to 200 employees. Because at that point, the best way someone said is, your culture is your product that you're selling to your future employers. And that's not hard when you're 10 people in one room. You can create a culture on your own as the president. Take people to beers, you know, have some learning nights, do things like this. But when you get to 100, 200 people, you lose control of it. There's some things you can do to proactively, drive it, and those are the things that we need to pay attention to. Has anyone read Dharmesh's Culture Code? I think it's had like 2 million downloads on SlideShare. You can check that out. And he tried to solidify what we were as a culture. Some of it was explaining some of the things we did. We didn't believe in command and control leadership. We believed that we hired smart people and set up ways to allow them to innovate and let the good ideas flow from them, whether it was through a wiki or lunch and learns or whatever. We don't have vacation policy. Take as much vacation as you want. We don't have set hours. We don't have desks. Don't have offices. None of the executives have offices. We all sit out on the floor. So we try to create this really transparent culture. And some of it was aspirational, what we wanted to stand for. But it became such an amazing recruiting tool. And you'd think, oh, whatever, it's a slide deck about a culture. I don't think the company would have succeeded without it, to be honest. Because I can't tell you how many rock star employees we got because they read the culture code and they wanted to work for that company. And when I look at what those folks did at our company, it's just, it was game changing for us. So culture is your product, and it's something that you have to pay attention to. And then I want to talk about selling and what I learned there, because I'll talk about personal selling and I'll talk about the team selling. Obviously that was a big thing for me. It's like, this guy never sold before, now he's running this global sales team, or he's chartered with it. And I had the misperception, as many business school students do, of like what selling was. When I go in front of MBAs, I'm like, hey, what do you think selling is? They're like, oh, it's just giving this really convincing presentation. It's never taking no for an answer, right? You hear those things. Great objection handling. And I couldn't agree more, I couldn't disagree more with those perceptions. My dad is actually a sales coach. He's helped my brother and I with our selling. And he was the one that like really retuned my perspective on selling. And all business owners, whether we think we're in sales or not, we are in sales. It's so critical. The way that I describe successful selling are you can build trust, if you can build trust very quickly with an individual such that you can earn the right to ask really personal questions about their nightmares, their challenges, their goals, and then figure out how you can help them with that. That really is the sustainable truth of sales excellence. And the exercise that I often challenge people who think they might want to go into selling with is, the next time, like you're going to be at cocktail hour later today, or if you're at a wedding this summer, or if you're at a business networking event, walk up to a stranger, introduce yourself, and start asking them questions. And see how long you can go without you having to sell anything about yourself. Right? Just, if they start asking you a question, like give them a quick answer and then redirect it back. Because I've done that a lot. I'm actually reasonably good at it. And I've had so many times where I would go up and I meet this person, 30 minutes, question after question. The only thing they know about me is my name. And they'll be like, it's really nice to meet you. They'll go off to their wife and be like, that guy Mark? He's an amazing guy. I just asked him 40 questions. I didn't tell him anything about me. But you know why? Because it's awesome when they're like, you know what? No one's ever asked me that before. That is an amazing question because it's reframed their view on the world. And you've got them to learn through the questions you ask them. And that is great salespersonship, right? Is now I've understood their context, and I asked this provocative question that improved that context. And as long as I'm an ethical salesperson, it improved it to better them, but also align with my unique value prop. So I know it's a little bit of a complex concept, but hopefully that triggers you some ideas on like, selling is not about getting up here and giving this amazing, persuasive presentation, arm-twisting people into a deal. That's not sustainable in this day and age where we as consumers are so empowered. But to ask questions and get to know people and see how you can help them, that really is sustainable. Right. And then in terms of like growing sales teams, I obviously use this like background in science and data to really grow the team. And I had written down this mission, predictable, scalable revenue growth. That is my mission in this job. And if you ever go off and raise money from investors, start off your sales and marketing slides with predictable, scalable revenue growth. I don't know why, but they just love that. They're like, write notes, they're like, this guy's awesome. This is exactly what we've been looking for. And so I had 4 tactics that I followed, which was, how can I hire the same successful person every time using data and science? That's the input to the formula. How can I provide them with the same quality and quantity of leads every month? Input to the formula. How can I train them in the exact same way? Right, that's my box. And then how can I hold them accountable to this consistent sales process that's proven to be successful? That's really what the book, The Sales Acceleration Formula, is about. And I used a lot of data and process to find that. But like, you'd be surprised, like, if you're not a sales-oriented entrepreneur, I've seen so many who are like, hey, what's your sales strategy? It's like, yeah, we're going to go hire salespeople from our competition, give them a quota, and go. That's not predictable, scalable sales. Right? So I'll give you 2 examples. One is in hiring. So remember, I'm trying to find the predictable scale, the same successful salesperson every time. I was talking to Sid a little bit about this earlier. So I think it was the 7th hire I made, first year. I convinced the #1 salesperson from a public company in Boston to come join HubSpot. We were literally like 13 people in a garage. And this person was coming from a 400-person sales team, and they were #1. #1. Made a lot of money the year before. And I somehow convinced them we were going to be the next Google. And they were joining the company, and I was like rolling out the red carpet, like, teach us to sell. Like, we are just a bunch of punks over here. You're #1 out of 400 people. Come teach us to sell. And I was amazed that they didn't crush it. Like, they didn't do poorly, but they didn't crush it either. And then I was like, you know what? I thought about the environment they came from. They came from this big company, literally running Super Bowl ads, right, with a known process, selling a very transactional product where it literally took 30 seconds to explain where you're coming from and 5 minutes to close a deal. That couldn't have been more different from HubSpot at the time. We were calling on people like, hey, you know, this is Mark from HubSpot. Oh, cool, what's HubSpot? Oh, we sell inbound marketing software. Oh, what is inbound marketing? Well, you create content to attract people to your website and convert them to leads. Wow, that sounds amazing. How does it work? I mean, it was a total evangelistic sell, very complicated. And you can imagine that the salesperson that would succeed in that public company would be way different than the salesperson that would succeed in our evangelistic context. So I realized at that point that, like, it's irrelevant to ask someone, what do you look for in a salesperson? Because it's so unique to your context. But there is a way to sort of engineer it for yourself. And this is an extreme example, but I like, you know, a simple model, if you ever, is anyone hiring salespeople here? Okay, cool. So a couple of people, if you ever go and hire salespeople, just take the time to write down the 10 characteristics that you think you should look for that will correlate with success in your environment. And take the time to like grade every candidate against that score. And even if you only hire 2 or 3 people in the year, at least you set out the process to be able to reflect on that process and iterate. Now I was fortunate that I was able to hire 20 or 30 in a couple years, to the point that I had enough stats to geek out and run a regression analysis on those weighted scores and success. And so, quick quiz for you guys. There were 3 criteria: coachability, curiosity, and intelligence. All of them were in the top 5. All of them were coachability, curiosity, intelligence. Which one do you think was #1 according to my regression analysis that predicted success. How many people think it was curiosity? Number one. Intelligence. Coachability. You got it. First audience in a while that's got it. Coachability was the one. And what was funny, well, it wasn't even in my initial theory of the 10 criteria that I was hiring for initially. It took a bunch of failures on my part and folks that I hired that were check marks on everything else, but they were like, you know, Mark, thanks for the training and coaching, but I've been selling for 20 years now. I know how to do this. I'll be over at my desk. And those are the folks that didn't work out. I don't know why. But it's time and time again, I've seen across many organizations, coachability actually test out quite well, especially in tech startups. So the last piece I'll share you on that one is on effective coaching. I think this applies anywhere, in any discipline, is so many sales teams see their sales managers driving a forecast and a pipeline. The most important thing that sales management, or you as the CEO manage your salespeople, is to develop the salespeople, is to coach the salespeople. And I want to talk about good coaching for a second. I've taken a lot of golf lessons. And one pro was like, Mark, take a swing, and I did. And he said, okay, here, turn your grip over a little bit here, lean back in your stance more, put more weight in your right foot, not your left, think 1 o'clock, not 2 o'clock in the backswing, and give me more wrist on contact. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me, right? Another guy was like, all right, Mark, take a swing, and I did. He's like, here, try this grip. Now take 100 swings without a grip. So I did. After 20 minutes, he's like, how's that feel? I was like, you know, that feels really good. He's like, now try leaning back in your stance more. And take another 100 swings. And I did. And, you know, it started to improve. Now, it's a really simple example, but I've promoted 18 salespeople to sales management over the years, and every single one of them took the approach of the first golf pro. They get that new salesperson in their company, they watch them do their sales process, they see 50 things broken with them, and they throw up on them for an hour and a half around those things, and you see the salesperson's head spinning, and nothing gets done. But the great sales managers, the great sales coaches, can see the 50 things, but they know the 1 or 2 that will make the biggest difference and focus on those. And they customize a coaching plan according to that deficiency and that person's learning aptitude. And I've applied that across a lot of different sales teams with great success, and many folks in other functions have seen that that's applied as well. So hopefully that triggers some ideas on scalable sales growth or scaling your company. All right, so the last thing I'll lead you with is just, you know, my journey at HBS at Harvard is, you know, it's funny. When I tell people that I've left HubSpot now, I'm on their advisory board and I'm teaching full time. Some people, a lot of people are like, why the hell would you do that? Most of the VCs are like, dude, I've got this awesome company I want you to come run. Why would you go into academia? And I think they really underappreciate the whole point of my 20-year journey was the autonomy, and now I've got it. I can be the dad I want to be. And I can come out here and visit my brother and meet you guys in Montana that I probably wouldn't have been able to do. Other people, like my brother, are like, dude, why don't you just golf and fish the whole time? Why aren't you doing anything? And you know, it's like, I'm just not sure that would be fulfilling. I think I'd cheat life a little bit, you know, because I've been so blessed. I've had this framework of like learn, do, teach has always been in my head. And I've got all this knowledge. And I will never go so far that it sacrifices the gifts I've been given around my autonomy and being the dad and the husband that I can be, and the advisor and the mentor and the teacher. But I do want to have a portion of my professional life to give back like that. And I read this book called The Alchemist this summer. Has anyone read that? It's a really good book, right? And, you know, that helped solidify that new mission, which is I had this mission around trying to achieve a certain level of entrepreneurial success, and knock on wood, so far it's gone well. Now I can swim in this pool of like everybody else's mission and see if I can't help folks form and crystallize that mission that will lead to long-term happiness, and see if I can't contribute with, you know, a random story I told today that might trigger one random idea. So that's really the journey at HBS is, you know, to be able to work with the students, really bright individuals that I enjoy, to see if I can inspire that, but also give me the autonomy to come out to events like this and meet really inspiring people, learn about your missions, and see how I can help. That's my story for today. I look forward to the Q&A after. Thank you.
Good stuff to wrap the day on. All right, well, thank you everybody for your willingness to be here and share in the energy and the ideas that are being generated. And hopefully you will stick with us to enjoy the cocktail hour. Cocktail hour is sponsored by Blackfoot Telecommunications, and a huge thank you to the Wilma and Montgomery Distillery for the creation of the Last Best Cocktail. Each of you have a token in the back of your name tag that is redeemable for one.